My name's Dan Campsall. I have the privilege of being chairman of a company called Agilysis, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as we go through. And I just want to say, when you could be kicking off your day listening to Nick Harris down on the highway strategy stage, or sort of orientating yourself around the hall, thank you very much for coming and spending some time to listen to me. So, as Khalifa says, I want to talk a bit about community and culture, keys for workplace well-being. So we did win the Highways Award last year for mental health and well-being, and I really want to sort of just walk you through a little bit of ways in which we have sought to engender a workplace in which the team can find a place of well-being together. But let me just start by telling you a little bit about us as a business. We are a mission-oriented business. We exist in order to transform lives through safer and healthier communities. Principally, we do that through our work in safe mobility, but as some colleagues are here, also increasingly starting to touch on the aligned issue of air quality. Now, Agilysis actually only came into being in 2017, so we're relatively young as an organisation, but our senior team have been working together for 20 years now, and firstly in the public sector and then as consultants since 2010. But whilst the company Agilysis only originated in 2017, it does mean that there's a sort of heritage and a body of work behind us that goes back much longer. And consequently, we do work with a number of the leading highway authorities across the UK and increasingly working with some global institutions as well to support them and their ambitions. So where I just want to start is with a word about culture. Because before I get into the sort of nuts and bolts, the tactics that we deploy in order to try and encourage well-being in the workplace, I just think it's all built on the fabric of having a healthy culture. Some of you might be familiar with organizational gurus like Simon Sinek, who says that building a strong culture is what builds the organization. We have sought to establish a cultural foundation that ensures that people can thrive. Or you might be familiar with perhaps the more famous quote by Peter Drucker, who talks about culture eating strategy for breakfast. But for us, it's a point of absolute clarity that if we want people to flourish, if we want our team to enjoy a sense of well-being, then we have to provide the right culture for them to flourish in. And that's a responsibility that leaders cannot shirk. You will get the culture that you intend, and you therefore need to invest in getting the right sort of culture for your people. So I want to take us through sort of a number of keys that we've then built on top of that sort of cultural foundation that we think are helpful in terms of developing a place where people are happy, where people are productive, and where our staff enjoy a high level of well-being. Firstly, making the mission matter. So I said right at the start, we're a mission-orientated company. We believe that what we do makes a difference, and we operate in a sector that touches the lives of every man, woman and child on the planet. There is nobody who isn't influenced by roads in their daily lives. They are the lifeblood of our economy. They connect people to education, employment and opportunity. They bring us our goods, and they take us to new experiences and connect us to the community around us. So, if you're here at this event, you understand that. That's something that we know and we share. But across the globe, this year, something like 1.35 million people will lose their lives on roads. And as many as about another 50 million will suffer injury, often life-changing injury. And to put that in perspective, that's equivalent to the population of somewhere like Spain or Argentina. And that is the scale of the global road safety epidemic that we face. And I think one of the things that we have constantly sought to do is to connect ourselves to that mission so that we get up for work every day. We do what we do out of a sense of that shared purpose that we are doing something which makes a difference. It's always very easy, isn't it, to get lost in the detail of, projects and specifications and finances and sponsors and all of those sorts of things. But keeping the mission front and foremost in our minds is a huge part of keeping us focused on something that makes a difference, which adds to our sense of personal and corporate well-being. So for us, that's expressed in a whole variety of ways. Often it's in the work that we get paid for, and that's great. When you actually get paid to do something that is making a difference, that's a fantastic contribution to your own personal welfare, but also to wider society. But we also get to invest in quite a lot of passion projects, particularly where we get to work with some of the fantastic NGOs who work in the transport space. And so some of them are just referenced here, but I'll name check a few of them. We do some work with PACT, the Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety, for which I happen to be the Vice Chair of the board. And if you aren't aware of PACT and their great work, then please do speak to me about that afterwards. We also work with RoadSafe, who have a focus on bringing together public and private sector partnerships, particularly around where technology can improve safety. Many of you will know Susie Sharman, who's speaking, I think, in just about every session that's happening today. From Road Safety Foundation, we work with them. Road Safety GB, we support them in the development of a national analysts community to bring together people who are working with data. And also Towards Zero Foundation supported a great project on looking at future predictions for road safety performance across Great Britain. So there's a number of, and Living Streets as well, with whom we did a great project looking at the combination of risk, deprivation and ethnicity on our roads. And then sometimes there's work that we do which is just our contribution towards that wider global mission of addressing road safety. So we work with an organisation called the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety, seeking to build capacity within the international community because of that global epidemic that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So this is the point where I want to sort of focus in a little bit on more tactically what we do as an organisation that helps us to ensure that mental health and well-being are a key focus for us as leaders and that we reflect our ambitions to have a staff that are flourishing in the work that they do. As you might expect from a company who focuses on data and analytics and artificial intelligence and some of those sorts of things, the data is really important to us. And having some empirical data that we can point to and understand how it's moving is therefore an enormously important part of us being able to understand the context in which we're operating. Now, I think it's also important to say that there's a huge amount of sort of exogenous factors that will influence the well-being of our teams. There are externalities caused by, the cost of living crisis, climate crisis, political uncertainty, and as an SME, we of course cannot influence all of those things. But if we don't start to measure the sense of well-being and shared sort of purpose within our team, we have got no sense of what's being moved by external factors and what's being driven by some of the things that are within our gift internally. So these are some of the things that we do. And these will be familiar, I guess, to many people, especially those in larger organisations. They're probably slightly less prevalent within the SME sector which we occupy. So we started out with an annual wellbeing survey, wanting to sort of test the temperature of where the team were at, but realised that actually as things change within the organisation, an annual dip check really isn't sufficient. And so what we do with all of our team is monthly we check in to find out how they're doing and collect wellbeing scores. We have qualified mental health first aiders on the team who have a particular responsibility to ensure that we're looking out for the wellbeing issues that might be influencing people, spotting any of those early signs and symptoms that stress, pressure, anxiety are starting to build, or there might even be some external things that are causing staff to struggle. We include a dedicated component of our appraisal, which then feeds into our one-to-ones and all of our sort of performance management that seeks to understand the well-being of our staff throughout the year. And recognizing that actually the kind of gatekeepers to staff well-being are often the team leaders, the line managers. What we did is we worked with our mental health first aiders and with some of those team leaders to build what we call our manager's guide to workplace well-being. So in there's a whole load of hints and tips for understanding what causes stress, how to identify it, and then some of the things that you might do in order to try and work with your team to decompress and reduce stress. We make sure that we have regular team meetings. So as a team, we gather twice a week to discuss things that are going on in the business, to talk about product development, all of those sorts of things that you will be doing within your organizations. There's a regular points of check-in as well around health and well-being too. So we make sure that it's on the agenda. People know that we are taking it seriously. And we've also sought to implement some other kind of, I was going to say sort of soft options, but actually they're quite hardwired into the company. We have got spaces around the office where people are free to go and decompress, take time out, and are encouraged to do so. Yeah, as I said, there's many things that will influence people's health and well-being, and we as an SME can't take care of all of those, but with our limited resources. But if we can understand how the things that we do are influencing the well-being of our staff, then those are the things that we can influence. And all of these measures, we can cross-tabulate with other aspects of the data that we capture as a business. So stuff around our work planning, our productivity tools, our time management tools, to understand how actually as pressures that are arising from the projects that we're delivering increase, what's that doing in terms of the well-being of our team. So those tactics will be similar to those employed elsewhere. What you might think is, well, does that mean that you're just determined to create a sort of nice cocooned environment for your staff? You can go and ask them. Some of them are sitting here. Actually, I think that's one side of what we're trying to do as a business. But the other side of it is about thinking how we can create an environment in which staff can grow. And so therefore actually creating a space for challenge, for stretch, for them to express and grow in terms of their own ambitions is also an important part of what we can do in the culture that we set. So I don't want you to sort of mistake any of that stuff that we're doing to try and create, a nice, sustained being of environment of well-being as meaning that we don't want to challenge and stretch our staff to grow as professionals and as people. So there are things that we've put in around that. So we've got a staff development schema. It works right across the business. Doesn't matter whether you're working in sort of project delivery or finance or marketing. We've got a whole number of values that work right across the business that we want staff to be growing in, that reflect who we are as a company, reflect the kinds of technical competencies that we want, but also some of the cultural values that we espouse as a business. And we've actually worked with the staff in order to translate some of those into a team culture resource guide, so that it's not only the leaders of the business who are espousing these values, but they are things that we share. And so we've got stories from some of the members of our team expressing what it means for them to be a part of this culture. Something which is owned by them and which they get to share amongst one another as well. And amongst those cultural values, in particular, I just want to draw attention to the values of challenge and accountability. So we're always asking, how can we provide growth opportunities for the team to be able to stretch themselves, to challenge themselves, and to grow both professionally and personally? And we expect staff to embrace that challenge as part of their own journey of growth. I think one of the other things that we found is that actually creating an innovative environment is also really important in terms of well-being. Staff feeling like there are opportunities to learn, to develop, to try new things, to experiment, to explore is an important part, rather than just, cranking the handle on project after project after project and delivering work and, filling in the spreadsheets and all of those things that are required. And among the real growth lessons for us as a business over the last 20 years, or as a group of professionals over the last 20 years, is just how dynamic the nexus is between different disciplines as they come together and can explore where those different disciplines and those areas of expertise can overlap in order to create opportunity for collaboration. So one of our earliest sort of experiments as a team was when I, with a background in social marketing and using kind of customer segmentation and insight, started working with my colleague, who is also our CEO nowadays, who was a database developer, and saying, how can we use more advanced data analytics to draw more insight from some of the data that we hold as an organization? And those moments of kind of inspiration that happen at the nexus between disciplines have been, for us, moments that have led us into greater exploration, new pioneering in new areas. But I think they're also key for some of our staff, because they get to explore and experiment and actually grow themselves as professionals by being part of that innovation process. And what we've sought to do is now build a number of those tools that we've used over the last 10 to 15 years into our own innovation playbook. So finally, I want to say a little bit about building community. What we have sought to do is to engender a profound sense of community within the team. So our corporate logo, as you might see on a few of us, is a lemur. Our staff refer to themselves as lemurs. And that means a bit more than just shorthand for what it means to be an employee of Agilysis. It means something, if you ask members of the team, it means a depth of relationship, a respect for one another, a sense of valuing one another in their personal lives as well as their professional lives. And that investment is something that is hugely important to us as a business. And it's not something that we can do on our own as leaders. It requires an investment from our people. And that's where actually this building of community is hugely important. And so these are some of the things that we have done as a company, from escape rooms to Lego serious play sessions, meeting up in the park for park runs, to our book club, WhatsApp groups for people who like everything from Formula One to cats. We've got a number of those things going across the business. But I do want to give a shout out to one last thing, which is hugely important to us as a business, which is what we call Lemur Fun Club. We have a group of colleagues who, as well as all of their other duties, exist to ensure that there are points of fun and community life for us as a business. They have organised barbecues for our staff and their families. They have organised treasure hunts around the town, nights out, and crucially, our very own Taskmaster series of challenges that has seen various members of our executive team and our senior leaders making quite a fool of themselves. But actually, it really does help to build something of the fabric of community that we enjoy together. So sometimes it can feel like maybe we're just having a little bit too much fun. But actually, it's hugely important in terms of building the fabric of relationships and community amid a diverse group of colleagues. and strengthening us as a business, because those people are our business. And if we can't create a place of well-being that they can enjoy and in which they can flourish, we haven't got much of a future together. And those are the things that I wanted to leave with you. If you want to ask me any questions, we've got a few minutes for that now. If you want to connect with me, I'm happy to chat afterwards, or you can use any of the details provided on the screen. Thanks very much.